I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. Whatever. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another office hour stream. Let me make sure that my audio is coming through, because I just had something unplugged and I plugged it back in. And make sure we're coming on through here. Yeah, we're good. So am doing an office hour stream tonight. Didn't think I was for a second. It was a moment where I got home from mass and I just passed out. Slept for like almost an hour, and I was thinking, do I want to get up right now? And so, I so don't want to stream. I mean, I wanted to stream because I have stuff to talk about, but I just didn't want to do it. And I texted Sound Engraver. I was like, I don't know, I'm thinking. And she's like, we have a wedding to pay for. She didn't say it in those words. As ever, my dear, sweet, supportive Sound Engraver said, oh, whatever you feel like, just remember, So, you know what? Not only for that reason, it's good for the channel. It keeps it going, and my channel doesn't make a ton, but as long as I'm sort of regular with content, I get a little bit, with revenue, coming through. And so it's important right now. But also, it was actually kind of cool. I'm going to welcome the chat here in a second, but I just want to say this right off the bat. Eldritch fan, you were the very first in the chat there. And you said, you said a couple of really cool comments. You said all these idiots talking about here. Let me put them on the highlight them here on the screen. You said all these idiots talking about Ahsoka in the latest episode and how she dog walked Luke in a duel, and here I am just counting the days till the next Star Wars book study. And then you said, P.S. keep up the book studies. It's hard to find people who want to deep dive into the old EU books, and I really appreciate that. Because that is why I do all of my Star Wars content, not just the Star Wars EU book studies, but it's why I talk about Star Wars regularly, and it really bothers people. It bothers people who like the Disney content. It bothers them so much that I point out how horrible it is, and consistently do so. And they will try to spin it. Big Al, love him as I do. He even does this. It bothers him that I talk about Star Wars. He'll say it doesn't, but he spends more time telling me how I don't stop talking about Star Wars than I actually spend talking about Star Wars. But they'll try and spin it as though Prof's obsessed. Prof, another video. But here's the thing. I do this on my own channel. As I've said before, I do not believe in going onto somebody else's platform, somebody else's comment section, or somebody else's, and telling them, oh, you shouldn't watch that. It's stupid. No. I have my own little corner of the internet in which I continuously talk about what I feel like talking about, and people can't stand it, but it's because it's the truth. Truth is never comfortable. And we're going to talk tonight about why I think this specific generation, or the current, generation of Star Wars fans, does kind of miss the point on some things. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I appreciate you saying that, because it is nice to know that the Star Wars content, the point of it gets through, and I know I do have a good core of people that follow along with the Star Wars EU book studies, which is great. Book studies are never going to be as popular is something else, another stream or another video or something, right now the Star Wars content's pretty hot for the channel because the Ahsoka series is going on, and that's just going to knock the algorithm, but I get lucky when that happens because I never really played to algorithms. I'm going to talk about what I'm interested in talking about at the moment and not talk about what I'm not interested in talking about at the moment. And sometimes that works with the algorithm, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, appreciate all the support for that. I really do. Luis Sanchez, thank you for the super chat. $9.99. Wow, thank you. The Star Wars shills really get what they deserve. They really do. They really do. Just remember all of the channels out there at the end of the season 1 of Mandalorian. This is great. Oh, just the meta narrative. They're sticking it to Kathleen Kennedy with bringing Luke back, and Favreau's gonna be their man. Filoni. Oh, in Filoni we trust. And they just they played up this whole insincere narrative to get people to click and to get people to talking about it and so forth. And I mean, how quickly did it become abundantly apparent that they didn't care about Luke? Filoni wants to replace Luke with Ahsoka. That's an objective truth right now. You cannot deny it. I had somebody comment on my previous, the last video I put on the channel was cutting out highlights of my birthday stream, in which I talk about Filoni and his writing and the Ahsoka series and such. And I had somebody comment, and it was somebody that comments on my channels a lot, so it wasn't like an insulting thing, but he was saying, he said, Luke is the one, though. They can't change that. He said, Luke's the one that defeats Anakin. It's not ultimately Ahsoka, and Luke does this and Luke does that, and they can't change that. I think that's pretty naive to think that. I really think it's kind of naive to think that. They desperately want to change that. That thumbnail that I put up for this video with the prequels, the Clone Wars, the Mandalorian, all that kind of new Disney stuff, and then the Ahsoka series, this is Star Wars to them. We have a generation right now that grew up with the prequels. A large portion of them didn't even bother watching the original trilogy, or if they did, it's like, ew, that's old. They don't think of it. They don't care about it. It's, Anakin is like their main guy, so many people are so excited that Anakin's back in the Ahsoka series. I mean, and this doesn't pertain to everybody who grew up with the prequels. I obviously know that, and I'm not trying to state that, but the prequels are great as prequels to the original trilogy. The episodes 4, 5, and 6, that's the rock of Star Wars. That's the central foundation. Even in the EU, everything has to be built on that foundation. Even if you tell stories about the bounty hunters or the dawn of the Jedi period that we're doing right now with the Star Wars studies, I mean, it all looks back. It's linked with spikes, spokes, like to the wagon wheel of the original trilogy. Even if it doesn't reference it, it's still thematically and continuity wise linked to that. And Filoni's trying to completely ignore that. Filoni wants to remake Star Wars into just those series that he's worked on. The scene, and I don't bother watching this trash, but I have heard about the episode, and apparently, Ahsoka, she sees Anakin and he's telling her, all these great stuff about her. Hey, you beat me. If you actually think, I mean, because there are people who are still trying to tell themselves that Ahsoka's not a Mary Sue. There's still people deluded into that. And you think Ahsoka Tano should be able to not only just like hand maul his butt to him easily, but defeat freaking Darth Vader? Ahsoka Tano to defeat Darth Vader, and you think she's not a Mary Sue? Ahsoka, if Ahsoka Tano could defeat Darth Vader, then she's even more powerful than Luke Skywalker, because he didn't defeat Darth Vader in a duel. Luke Skywalker's heart, Luke Skywalker's aspirational heroism is what eventually won and converted Darth Vader. And you're going to sit there and tell me that, no, they're not changing anything. They're just developing different parts of the Star Wars. BS. Stop being so naive. Let me get to some of these super chats before I go any further with that. Eldritch Fan said, ever watch the Prism reworking of the sequels? Still haven't watched that. It might be a while right now with the wedding planning and stuff like that. It's on my radar, but again, and I might watch it. I might think it's decently done, but it's not really. I can't imagine a reworking of the sequels, even a good reworking of the sequels, something I would really get behind and say we need more of this, because I don't like I don't like the characters of the sequels. I don't like the premise of the sequels. I think the EU already gave us the sequel era, for for faults here or there and strengths here and there, whatever. But I will watch it, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. One of these days. Luis Sanchez again. I think that was you actually. Chad for $4.99 right now. Family Guy Star Wars is more Star Wars than Disney Star Wars. Amen. Hey, Robot Chicken Star Wars is more Star Wars than Disney Star Wars. But you think about it, you've got this generation that grew up, and it's not their fault. And again, I'm not saying everybody who grew up with the prequels is like this. I know a lot of people who are of that generation who grew up with the prequels. Many of you here enjoyed it, but then you linked it back to the original trilogy. You eventually got into that, and you do understand Star Wars. So I'm not at all saying it's everybody who's of this age is they just don't get it. This isn't great grumpy old man saying get off my yard. But I do think that there is a real problem with a lot of Star Wars fans today who did grow up, millennials, just the millennial generation who grew up with the prequels in the theaters. And that was the Star Wars. Their parents were loving Star Wars, so they took them to see the movies. They were excited about it. And the kids were in that era, which, we know from the original trilogy era where Star Wars marketing's everywhere, they grew up with that. Then Clone Wars came out. Maybe they watched Clone Wars, and Clone Wars, overall as a whole, the whole series, it's not a horrible crap show beginning to end. Ahsoka's a crap character in it, but there was some good writing done in it, even though it retcons a lot of what the EU has already established with the Clone Wars. But, they grew up with that. And then when Disney comes along with all this Disney Plus, series stuff, not the sequels. The sequels are pretty much spitting in the face of everybody and everything. But when, I don't know how it happened, Favreau convinced them to let him do his thing, or somehow, they realized after Solo and the utter bombing of the box office of Solo, they realized they needed to try a different tactic. They really did decide that these are the people that they wanted to appeal to, this millennial generation that grew up with prequels, Clone Wars. So they have Filoni in there. And other than a passing nod to Luke, sure, he shows up a couple of times in The Mandalorian or whatever, or Boba Fett, whatever. But we are making it abundantly clear here that the Disney Plus Star Wars is not at all interested in following Luke. In fact, Kathleen Kennedy many times has said, that's done. That story's over. We're telling a different story now. And I don't agree with that at all, but it's one thing to say that for stories that come after Luke's time. It's a whole new level of presumptuous arrogance to say that about, and to mean it, about stories that are taking place in Luke's time. I mean, the fact that Filoni is just bastardizing the Thrawn trilogy all over the freaking place with this Ahsoka series, and not including Luke and spit of it. Ahsoka, his baby, is the main character. Or Sabine Wren, he's his baby too. She's his baby too. And people don't see this. People don't see how they're rewriting Star Wars without Luke Skywalker. It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense for the things in all these Disney Plus series to be happening, and Luke Skywalker's still alive, but he's not going to be involved in this. No, it makes no sense. And people try to, justify it and do their mental gymnastics over it. It doesn't make any sense. The prequels only worked when they were pointing towards the original trilogy, because the prequels are a tragedy. What heroic story do you have of the prequels? There's no inspiration that the prequels can give you that doesn't necessitate looking forward to the original trilogy. I mean, Anakin's a tragic figure. There's no redeeming Anakin Skywalker as some sort of hero that we can all look up to. I mean, you can look up to him in parts of his life, sure. But you look at his whole life story, he's a tragic character that's there as a warning. Do not go that way. How is he the character that everybody flips their lid over? And that's kind of telling too, right? For millennials, and again, I'm saying millennials, that average generation. I know a lot of you are millennials. Hey, Sonograver is a millennial because I was born right at the cusp of Gen X, which is actually called a Zennial technically. So technically, even though it's not that many years apart, I'm a Gen X marrying a millennial, but so I'm not saying that it's all millennials or anything, but there is this common phenomena of these millennials who grew up in this culture that was a little bit more, self-loathing, a little bit more, let's just look sort of more at the nihilist aspect of it. And you just look at the prequels and it would seem that Star Wars is applauding that in some way. Even Clone Wars has got that Order 66 always hanging over its head. And even the Disney Plus era right now with the Mandalorian and the Ahsoka series and all this kind of stuff, the Rebels series and all that kind of stuff, even that era has got the New Order. It's got the sequel garbage, Kylo Ren's New Order right there hanging over that's head, and that is what all of these Favreau and Filoni series are working up to. Don't even try to say it's not. That's what they're working up to, is they're bridging the gap between the sequel trilogy. They've admitted it. Filoni, Favreau blatantly said it. You just got these deluded people. They have to say that because they're still fighting Civil War. I need to believe in the Civil War, guys. It's just, no, you don't. You need to wake up. So why, if you're still watching Ahsoka, why? I mean, a lot of people commented on my last video who got what I was saying, even agree with what I was saying, and said, I'm only there though for those Anakin scenes, or I'm just fast forwarding to the Anakin scenes, because that's Hayden Christian Anderson. It's or John Hayden. I'm sorry, I get his name all kind of mixed up with Hans Christian Andersen. Yeah, I know I said it wrong. Who what I'm talking about. They got the actor back who is, it's nostalgia for them. And I get that, it's the same actor that we, grew up going to see in Star Wars. It's the same thing with you. If you saw Mark Hamill, whatever, it's not the same thing. It is the same thing in terms of nostalgia. But here's the thing. The original trilogy is objectively better story than the prequel trilogy, than the whole Clone Wars series. It's objectively better. It's not a matter of opinion. And listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying, although I think we can certainly make that argument very easily, that the writing's better, all these things are. The story that's told of the original trilogy, George Lucas meticulously studied the hero's journey. He was a student of Joseph Campbell. He ran this story outlined by Joseph Campbell a number of times. He made sure that the story arc of Luke in the original trilogy was true blue hero's journey. And that's important because that resonates with us on a human level. Now, Anakin's story in the prequels has resonances of that. And it's again, it's supposed to be sort of a dark shadow of the original trilogy because it's supposed to point us back to the original trilogy. And for people who just think, the original trilogy, that's just my thing. I don't care about the original. People who think the prequel trilogy is their thing and they just don't care about the original trilogy, they're missing the whole point. They are missing the entire point of Star Wars. Anybody who ever tells you Star Wars is more than just Luke Skywalker, get over it, completely doesn't understand Star Wars. They do not they don't have a clue what Star Wars is. Anybody who gives you that line about get over Luke, it's more than just Luke, or you're just a Luke fanboy, blah, blah, blah. No, because that's not what we're saying. We're not saying everything has to be a Luke story, but we're saying the crux of Star Wars, the foundation of Star Wars, is Luke Skywalker's journey in that original trilogy. You can't slap an Ahsoka sticker over that. Ahsoka will never work as the linchpin of Star Wars, and Filoni is just trying his little heart out to make that happen. And people who are just accepting it and just watching this garbage are helping him along with it. Stop hate watching. You're giving it attention, and this, it's cool. It's kind of at a precarious place here, because I don't for a second think that enough people are awake yet to the point where they're just not going to tune into this stuff. But we're getting there. We're closer than we've ever been. Let me say it that way. And that's going to require people who are just curious not to tune in, not give it that view, not give it that watch, because you do have people who will it's just content. There are people who really don't care about Star Wars. You get this in fandoms and everywhere. There are fans, fans of a franchise who really don't care about that franchise in terms of the stories, the characters. That's somewhere down on their level of what they care about, but that's not the main thing. The main thing they care about is the community of the fandom. So as long as there's a Star Wars logo, as long as there's the music and the spaceships, they're in. That's Star Wars for them. That's something they can watch. They can go online and find the hashtags. They can talk about. They can find their favorite YouTubers talking about it. That's their fan. That's what's really important to them. It's not really the story. It's not the characters. It's not the mythic resonance of the tale. It's not that at all. And these fans, just hypothetically, I guess you can say there's nothing necessarily wrong in that, but in practice, there's a lot wrong in that, because in practice, that's how mythologies become diluted. That's how you get to where like no one cares about a character anymore, because you've just ran it into the ground and you've placed the Star Wars sticker on so many different things. And Filoni's fast running out of the nostalgia clout that he had, the nostalgia credit that he had with Ahsoka in the Clone Wars era, that's fast running out. And that's beautiful to see. It's so beautiful to see. But he's still got some of that credit, and he's still working away at it, trying to convince people that this is now Star Wars. This is it, just prequels, Clone Wars, and our Disney Plus stuff. That's Star Wars, and people are just squeeing about it, which is completely misses the point of Star Wars. Completely and utterly misses the point of Star Wars. Star Wars is the hero's journey. In the EU, again, like I said, you've got eras, you've got books that don't even remotely mention Skywalker or Luke or anything like that, and that's fine. But they're all connected to the theme of the original trilogy, and they're all connected, whether they're in the past or in the future. They're all looking back to Luke as being the chosen one in a way that his father couldn't, are helping, however you want to see it, helping Anakin be the chosen one, because ultimately Anakin does overthrow the Emperor, and you could say that is what brings balance or whatever, but Luke is the key to all of that, and you can't rewrite it away from that. You completely end up with something that's not Star Wars. Stop trying to tell Star Wars stories then, just go tell another science fiction story or whatever. It's people just don't get it. And what happens when a generation or people just refuse to accept something like that, and they want to just redefine or recreate something the way they want to recreate it, is that if they're successful, then they will eventually get society to think of Star Wars without, in their new definition of it. But then it loses its mythic resonance and it fades out over a few years, 10 years tops or whatever. I mean, that's kind of what's happened with Superman, Only us older fans, our younger fans who've rediscovered the true stories of Superman, really know what his character is. My students, that I teach in college, they don't have a flipping clue who Superman is. I was reading articles today, people trying to justify My Adventures or whatever, that new garbage Adult Swim show. That's really got the character right. Anything with an S shield on his chest and who is remotely saving somebody is Superman to people, and it's just that's not true. It's garbage. It's not. These characters are written in specific ways. They've settled in popular culture in specific ways, stories, characters, and so forth. You can't just go changing them. You can't just go, well, here's a different version, same name, whatever. The bottom drops out of the appeal. And then they might have enough sort of popular appeal because they're the story of the moment, and if it's something like Star Wars, it's got some momentum behind it already. But as soon as you drop that bottom out, 10 years tops, no one's going to give a crap about Star Wars anymore. And that wasn't the case when the original trilogy came out. The original trilogy, even though after Return of the Jedi, other than the Marvel comics, it wasn't until the 90s that you even had the EU really getting off the ground. But Star Wars it was innate. It was woven into the foundational fabric of our culture. You might never have seen a Star Wars movie, but you knew Luke, you knew Vader, you knew certain things about it. And that was the case, all the way up through the prequel era and beyond. It was as soon as Disney got their hands on it and dropped that bottom out and started running it into the ground with all this other stuff. Luke what? Oh, is that that Mandalorian series thing? Is that something from that? Like that's your average, millennial or Gen Z's, take on it now. Because Gen Z, because if millennial generation thinks of it that way, then their kids, the Gen Zers, are watching Disney, plus series with them. Because this is the Anakin that I grew up with, and Luke who, who's that? So it's Star Wars is as it should have been, as it was in our culture for so long, is gone. It's gone. It's up to us to keep remembering the good stuff and fighting for the good stuff, like the original trilogy, the EU, and all of that, to insist upon it. And it'll make people so mad. They'll get so mad that you're just still talking about this, but never stop, insist upon it. And not because Star Wars should be, it's because our society, our culture is dependent upon good mythology. When you keep rewriting a culture's mythology and dropping the bottom out and adding this and doing it in this way, this is what the ideologues want to happen. This is why they keep going after our established franchises and established mythologies and rewriting them with their own, twisted backward value system, is because they want to remake society. And the way you remake a society is you remake its mythology. There you go. Andre Hernandez, thank you so much for $10. Thoughts on hashtag Give Us Legends? I like the EU, but I'm kind of happy they didn't continue it. I don't trust them to handle the EU, so let them cause chaos in their twisted alternate universe. That's a great point. It really is a great point. So, yeah, there's a movement going on about saying, look, Disney, at least continue giving us stories in the EU continuity. Keep doing your Disney continuity if you want, but at least give us, more stories. And on the one hand, that sounds like a great idea, right? Because, like I said, we're right now in the Star Wars EU book studies, we're doing the Dawn of the Jedi era. And that era was woefully undeveloped. You got the one novel and the 3-part comic series. And then you could see that they had planned on really fleshing that out and connecting it to the, to the other world era, to the other time era, but they never got a chance to do it. And of course, there's so many other examples of things in the EU that just never got a chance to flesh out, to have more sequels and so forth. I think the only thing, and I'm not up to date on all of my Star Wars The Old Republic expansion packs or new DLCs or whatever, but I think that's the only place that people are saying like there's still new EU stories or whatever, but I have not current on that. Yeah, so when it comes to Give Us Legends, I'm with you, Andre. I wouldn't trust. In theory, I would love new stories. I would love even some of the same authors to come back. But we've been bitten in the butt by some of these authors who used to give us great stories and are now just towing the ideologue line. So I don't trust it. I don't want new EU stories right now anyway. Maybe as some fans or something like that, got something going, or it was kind of like, workshopped in fandom, first or something, that would be cool. But I do agree with, and I think you would agree with this too, Andre, but Eldritch Fan, at least give us unabridged audiobooks. Disney was doing that for a time. Disney's trying to like re-release a lot of the EU content under its Legends banner, and they give it some crappy new cover and they call it Disney Legends as a way to like affirm that this isn't continuity. This is just something that people used to read. And occasionally there was some good stuff in it. It's really condescending the way they've marketed that. But one of the good things about that was that for a while, every new Disney EU book, not Disney EU, every new Star Wars EU book that they would re-release as a Legends or whatever, did for a time get an unabridged audiobook released as well. If there wasn't one already, in existence. They've stopped that. With the last wave, I think the one EU book that they re-released in the last wave, trying to call it, Legends, was Yoda Dark Rendezvous. And they didn't even bother releasing an audiobook of that at all, a full-on unabridged audiobook. They started with their waves of EU books to release the X-Wing Chronicles. And they got like 3, I think, or something like that. And then they just stopped releasing, the unabridged audio and everything. It's garbage. It's just no. Eldritch Fan is still fighting for me to watch Prism. Prism gets it. Everything you're saying. That's great. And that's good for them. I'm glad they're doing it then. But they can't be getting everything I'm saying if they're rewriting the sequel trilogy instead of just moving along with what the EU already has for us. There's a difference a little bit between what I'm saying, but I'll check them out at some point. I'll get back into some of the places. I saw some people tagging me in the chat, but I wanted to mention. Well, let me do the chat first, and then I'll mention these, because the chat has been going crazy. I'm sorry, just getting through my thoughts there. I never even welcomed the chat too. I'm sorry, it's way too late in the stream to do that, but I do see you guys there. Like I said, Eldritch fan, appreciate that. Private Eye in Retrospectiva, Stress Levels, of course, my dear Sound Engraver, the Chuck Jose channel, Samuel Proctor. Great to see everybody here. Willie K, Mr. D-Man, Slav. Good to see you, Slav. Darth Enigma. And we got way too many watching now, like 65 or so for watching for me to welcome everybody. But good to see everybody here. Jackhammer City says, I love your Star Wars book study, especially the ones on Darth Plagueis and Mace Windu. Yeah, those were a lot of fun to do. What we're doing right now is, we're finishing. We're going to have Dawn of the Jedi finished by the end of September. And that's not everybody's cup of tea, understood, but it's something I wanted to get through the study of. October, I'm taking a break from having to stream every week in a weekly book study, just because I'm getting married in October. Sound Engraver and I are, that's our big month, and it's going to be really busy, and it is a little stressful having that due date every week, of a stream to prepare for book study wise, because a book study preparation isn't just rereading the book. It's also marking things that you want to read. It's also, so I need to take October off from that. But what I'm probably going to do October is I'm at least going to do a review of at least one of these. It's the, for Halloween, it's the Star Wars Galaxy of Fear. This was a little series that was done in the 90s there when Goosebumps and, all those kind of books were really popular. And Star Wars EU, they put out a little version. They're children's books, but they're kind of like Goosebumps in space. It's Goosebumps in the Star Wars universe, And I've got most of them. This is a nice library cover, so it's hardback, because they were mostly released in just paperback. But every now and then you can find a library-bound book. So I'll do the first one here, Galaxy of Fear, Eaten Alive. It's I'll at least do like a review of one of the books or something like that. So there will be some Star Wars EU content in October. When we come back in November, what I'm kind of leaning towards most right now, could change, but I'm kind of leaning towards most doing Dark Empire and talking about the issues with it, but the ways I think that the EU kind of came around it and sort of made it work in the end. We're going to be looking at, I'll be reading the comic and showing the comic, but we'll also be doing the, and I'll share the link because they're free, on YouTube everywhere. They did some really good audio dramas of all three Dark Empire series, 1 and 2 and 3, and really good acting, really good, it's like an audiobook, but with, the all the effects and stuff. And the reason I'm talking about audiobooks so much, in case you're, haven't been with my Star Wars streams, is that Al joins me on those studies, and he's it helps him to have an audiobook to listen to while he's reading along. It it just helps him. He's on some medication and stuff that he's talked about before. It's a focus issue and stuff, And a lot of people today, he's not a younger person, but a lot of younger people have just lost the brain capacity to sit down and focus on one thing. The attention span that's just gone in today's youth, or a lot of even adults today, because of the way our culture's gone. So audiobooks are a great way. I tell my students that if you want to eventually get to the point where you can just sit down and read a book, there's no shame in audiobooks. That's one way there. At least you're training your brain to listen and pay attention to something, Eventually, of course, you want to get to the point where you're able to just read something as well. But so we might do the audio dramas, the Dark Empire audio dramas in November. And we can cover those kind of quickly because they're, audio, and they're kind of short. It's not like a big novel. It's a comic series. Darth Enigma says they fail to understand true power and strength isn't just about physical ability. Yes. Jack Hammer says, I bet you're going to have Ahsoka be the one to stop Thrawn. Oh, I know they are. Yeah, he wants to do the Thrawn trilogy, or his bastardization of it with her as the star. Absolutely. Samuel Proctor says, I grew up with the OT and prequels, loved both of them. I even spent her high school liking Disney Star Wars. Then episode 9 came out and all but the OT fell apart for me. Yeah, it's just, I don't know where Fan Man is right now in his in his thinking about Star Wars, but for him, it got to the point where he couldn't even go back and watch the original trilogy anymore. He was just so like he still loved the original trilogy, he still loved that, but he was just so disgusted. And he's talked about this, how just everything Disney's doing and the way the culture is just embracing the garbage that they're doing. He was just so disgusted by it. Now I don't. I understand you can get to that point, but I don't ever think we should try to get to that point. I think we should, no shame on Fan Man, I understand where he's coming from, but that's why I fight so hard to keep, the real Star Wars, the EU, the original trilogy in people's, before people's minds, to really never let go of that something great that worked for culture so well. Darth Enigma said, I remember people complaining about how boring it would be if Rey was a Skywalker, because they're tired of all the Skywalkers when we legit only had 2 over the course of 6 films. You're right. Yeah. That nonsense. Like, it's time to tell other stories in the Star Wars universe than the Skywalker saga. Of course. Yes. In one sense, absolutely. But stop trying to pretend that you need to distance yourself from the Skywalker saga in order to tell those stories. You don't. In fact, if you're going to tell good stories about other beings and other time periods and everything in the Star Wars universe, that's great. Please do that. But if you're going to do it well, then they need to be connected in that spoke to the OT. Ed Starr, good to see you here, sir. Says, seems to me writers have to love the stories they want to tell. Pushing an agenda just pays the bills. You are absolutely right. That's a really insightful comment there, Ed. And thank you for the super chat. That's why ideologue stories always fall flat. Always. That's why you see writers who used to give us such amazing work, amazing stories. Once something switched, and it happened some point during the teens where culture just fell away, and the ideologues held sway in all of Hollywood, again, like Hydra coming alive inside a shield or something like that. They got power. And a lot of these authors who used to give us wonderful work, suddenly, ideology, the whole definition of an ideology is that it takes over your brain. It's like a zombification, it takes over, and everything you do has to be in service to the ideology at that point. This is how cults work, And so just sitting down to tell a good story, suddenly there's no such thing as an organic story. There's no such thing as good art anymore. And these writers still might know how to craft like the nuts and bolts of crafting a story, but everything they're doing now is in service to the ideology, just like you're saying, pushing the agenda. Pays the bills, sure, especially in today's climate, but the art's garbage, and it's popular in the moment. So people are always like, how dare you, how can you say that? Look, it got such and such a box office. Again, this was Captain Marvel's a perfect example of this. People just laughed and laughed when you tried to tell them that Captain Marvel was a garbage movie. If it was anything remotely like a good movie, it would have had a sequel like that. It wouldn't be so controversial. People would have shouted us down in a heartbeat, and it would have just been accepted. And it's not. It was a garbage film, so they're trying to like sputter out some kind of sequel with other characters to come in and support her because no one likes her. So good point. Andre Hernandez for $5. Thank you so much, sir. Said, unlike Marvel and DC continuity, at least they made a twisted alternate universe and left the wonderful EU alone. That's true. At least we've got that with the EU. They, sucks as much as it sucked for them to just end the EU and do their own thing, as arrogant as that was, at least they're not ruining that continuity. Superman, Batman, the DC and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's insidious because it by connecting it to the continuity, someone was telling me the other day about this series of Batman comics, the One Bad Day Batman comics. Oh, they're so good. I was like, oh, cool Batman comic. This sounds good. So I looked it up. Oh, this came out in like 2021, 22. It's not good. I don't care if there's some sparks of this or that you think was good in it. No, it's not good because it's built on the continuity. You can't tell a story after Tom King's Batman and tell me that it's good. Even if there's got elements of goodness to it, unless they do a hard break from that, it's still part of that garbage continuity. And yeah, we don't have that with, new EU stories, which is good. This is why I don't understand if people who did agree with us on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example, and how it's just gone to garbage. I don't understand why they still would feel the need to go back and watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I mean, yes, on the one hand, you're revisiting some of the characters that you've enjoyed and there's not, I haven't seen it. I don't bother seeing it, but apparently there's not a lot of wokeness or whatever in, that movie or whatever. But it's not really Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You've got this setup, this dynamic that's just disgusting based on the nonsense fallout of Endgame, and it just doesn't work. It's just like, I don't want to spend time with them. I've been playing the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy video game. That's an example of something that somehow came out recently and is actually pretty darn good. I mean, that Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, is even more fun to spend time with than the movies. And I love the first two movies. But anyway, I'm getting all kinds of tangents and whatnot. Slav, thank you so much, Slav. Appreciate the you're a genuine super friend there. Said, Prof, did you ever get that email for Force Unleashed book study? I sent them again. If not, is there any way I can reach you? I want to help you out. You're talking about the is this, I'm sorry, remind me, Slav, are you talking about the links to the oh yeah, Force Unleashed. Okay, I remember. You're talking about the links to the Unabridged. What is can you give me like a word? I'm not asking you to give your email out on here on the live on the stream, but if you could give me a word that is in your email, then I can search my inbox. It's possible that it's there and I missed it, because I do get a lot of junk email too, but give me a word that's in your email address that I can do a search for, because I would love, I was looking for those emails, and I would love that. I appreciate you sending that to me and helping me out. But yeah, like, give me a word that's in your address or whatever, so I can do a search. I'll be looking for it in the chat here. Yeah, Kimberly Goss, the 15-year anniversary of the Force Unleashed video game. Is it really 15 years? I did not know that. That's awesome. That is awesome. Those were some great games, and I really liked where it was going. That's something else I wish they would have developed a little bit more. I've read the novelizations and I've played the 2 games. I haven't yet read the comic adaptations. I need to do that. Kevin is in the email address. Okay, let me try that, Slav. Just while we're talking, the heck of it here, I've already given my main spiel of the stream for tonight. Let me just look here. No, I've got emails from Kevin J. Anderson, his mailing list, but I don't see any other Kevins coming through. So I don't know what it is. Maybe let me check my my spam or something. Although it's weird that suddenly, something should come through in spam if it's just from somebody's email address. No, I don't know why. Maybe if it was a link or something you sent, I don't know why it wouldn't come through. You can try this. You can go on Twitter or X now or whatever it is. I don't have a Professor Geek Twitter or X, but I do still have a open Twitter account for my Catholic Bible Geek channel, which I think is, let me check on that. I think it's the handle is, I hardly ever sign into it. I only look at the posts every now and then from my like from my bishop and stuff like that. I like to look at stuff like that. But I'm just trying to find it as an alternate way for you to contact me, perhaps, that might go through if this didn't. I think it's at geek_Catholic. That's that's another alternate way to maybe reach me with a message or something like that, because I'd be interested in seeing that. I really appreciate you trying to get it for me. Yeah, at geek_Catholic. See if that happens, and I'll check it after the stream. Gentle Savage said, "Yo, Prof, have you heard the creator of the comic series Fable?" Yeah, I just read about this last night. Bill Willington decided to give DC Comics the middle finger by making Fable Comics public domain. This was the coolest article. It popped up for me last night, and I read this. I love the first, I think it was like 2 volumes of Fables, Bill Willingham's Fables. I never followed after that. Just, got busy or whatever. I think there were some spinoffs and whatnot, and he did it as a DC, under DC anyway. And I don't know the legalities of it. Like, did he actually sell the property to DC or whatever? I don't think he did. But he was basically, in this article, he's unhappy with the way DC's running his property, and they wouldn't listen because they're not. DC's evil, they're going to do what they want to with these characters, these beloved characters, and screw you if you don't like it. 2 or 3 YouTubers out there are still going to read and review everything they do, despite its garbageness, its garbageness. I like that word. So yeah, he came out and said, well, screw you, DC. I'm just making it all public domain. And he officially announced it. Now, I don't know the legal things behind this or not. I'm sure DC as Warner Brothers will fight that. I'm sure they'll probably win, like I said, because they're evil. DC has a long history of just crapping on its creators ever since Siegel and Schuster. But even, right up to just like all the amazing creators that gave so much to DC, they just turn their back on them and ignore them. What, die off. We don't care. Everything goes to Scotty Snyder. It's just, so DC never cares about its creators, and they've got that long history of it. And so it doesn't shock me at all that they would be driving Fables into the ground. And I'm sure they'll pull some sort of, shady, they'll do whatever they need. They'll grease whatever palms they need to, I'm sure, to make sure that this can't be in the public domain. But it'd be awesome if it really went through. And it's so cool that, an author would get to the point where he's like, you know what, DC, screw you. I'd rather give it to the public. I'd rather no longer be able to make money on this than let you run it into the ground. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. So yeah, I did hear a little bit about it. I'd like to follow it a little bit more though, but thanks for reminding me about it, because I did want to mention it tonight. Samuel Proctor says, I've taken your advice on not watching any new Hollywood movies. Only new movies I watch now is outside Hollywood. Daily Wire movies, Angel Studios, for example. Yeah. And it's not like, I've said this before, but just to reiterate, because you basically said what I'm saying in a nutshell, and I know you know the whole of it. But it's not that you can't ever experience any new thing that comes out of Hollywood post after this date. After this date, everything they do is garbage. What you have to realize is chances are everything they're doing is garbage. So stop running right to the box office or running right to the video game store or whatever as soon as something's released. Don't give them that attention. They need to know that they've lost that right. They've lost the right for us to give anything they do a chance. What you do now is you wait and you see, okay, it's been out a little while. What are people consistently saying about it? You can read a synopsis here and there. This is what I did with the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. Was so taken with the idea of it when I heard about it, but I was like, they'll never do that right. Especially what they did with Marvel's Avengers video game. No way. But then I kept hearing things, heard the soundtrack, which was freaking awesome. And reviews were consistently saying it's this, it's not this, it's not this. And then someone ended up getting it for me for Christmas one year, and I finally just put it in and said, "Well, let's see what it's like." And I'm thrilled. I'm over the moon that I did not jump on it right when it was out. I'm glad I waited. It's like, because Hollywood doesn't deserve that, or Hollywood for video games. Just media in general. But what do I think? I think of Revan and the Knights of the Old Republic stories. Love them. Revan's the man. There he is. Jedi Knight Revan. Need to get the Sith Lord Revan too. Love the Knights of the Old Republic. I really wish. I wish I'm not going to say now because I don't trust anybody to do it now, but I wish they would have given us a novelization of the games. Such cool stories. Revan in the comics was great. I think they dropped the ball a little bit. The Old Republic era dropped the ball a little bit with the Revan story, but I think it could be salvageable if a writer got a hold of it and saved it. I wish that had happened, But yeah, I love the Knights of the Old Republic. The comics, the Knights of the Old Republic comics have one of my favorite Jedi. I can't remember his name right now, but he's the Padawan who gets blamed for all the murders and everything and goes rogue. He's one of my favorite characters ever in Star Wars. He's amazing. And the Knights of the Old Republic comics were prequels to the games, but man, they were good. It's good stuff. Let me mention this before it goes away, because I'll probably start wrapping up here in a few. But Sound Engraver is doing a stream tomorrow. She's coming back to streaming. She finally got a new computer, got it all set up. It looks good. Everything's great. So she is streaming. She's got a link in the chat there. She set up her stream tomorrow already. So I guess that'll tell us what time it is and everything. Zane Carrick. Yeah, thank you, Darth Prime. Zane Carrick. Yeah, what a cool character. What a great character. Yeah, he goes down in my list of like one of the best Jedis, one of my top five Jedis, He's a great character. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. I see Ed Star. Yeah, be a critical consumer. Yeah, or as I say, consume stories responsibly, right? Well, you go give it a chance. I gotta give it a chance. People are just, they've got to be in the know, I should probably stop doing voices on my channel. I don't know if you guys caught. If you haven't, you need to go catch Fan Man's Second Cup Cafe. this morning. He does it on most Saturday mornings, and it's a really good show. Fan Man's just got this presence. He's like a late night talk show host. I mean, he's worked in professional radio. He's got that voice, and he's got his soundboard that we can talk about whether he uses a little too often or not. But he's really slick. He's got a good produced show, and he's got such a hilarious persona and stuff. And he'll talk about, sometimes it's geeky. He's kind of like me. He doesn't care about the geek world much anymore because of all the crap it's doing, you know. But this morning he did a new segment where he hasn't got a name for it yet, but he's calling it like YouTubers out of context. So he went to my birthday stream and got like 3 or 4 clips of things of me saying and like strung them together. Oh, it's just awful. It's just awful, but it's funny. You can check that out on Fan Man Second Cup Cafe. But that's why I'm like, oh man, I better stop. Better not say that. Better not say that. So yeah. Oh, nice. Is it S.A. Mono? It says the whole Revan versus Mandalorians reminds me of the Punic Wars. Revan's like a force wielder. Scipio. Yeah. I never thought about that. I have to think more about that. That's a really cool idea. I'll have to think more about that. And but yeah, it's worth. Yeah, you might be on something there. Oh yeah, I agree, Darth Enigma. At this point, Star Wars might be better off in the public domain as well. Absolutely. All of our beloved franchises, I argue, would be better off in the public domain today because they're already giving us crap stories of them. So, the bad writers in the public domain can't hurt them any more than actual Hollywood has hurt them. But at least good writers would have the rights to get a hold of them and tell good stories and publish them. Yeah, I'm fully in support of that. Andre says it's hard to find those comics. The Epic collections are out of print, unfortunately. Yeah, it is really hard to find, and maybe this is kind of what I'll wrap up tonight. It's hard to find good copies of old EU stuff and not pay an arm and a leg of it. I've got the Tales of the Jedi here, the Knights of the Old Republic comics. I've got the old paperback omnibuses from Dark Horse, and they're really solid. So you can find them here and there, but it does become it gets pricey. The last thing I acquired from my EU collection was the book 3 of the Dark Forces trilogy, Jedi Knight, Dark Forces Jedi Knight. You can see it's actually got an old library copy because it's got the laminate. This was like, I think when I got it, it was like $112 or something. It was a heavy purchase. It wasn't something that you can do lightly. And don't worry, Sound Engraver. Sound Engraver always talk about how Van Man will always say, "Oh, I gotta explain this purchase to my wife. Oh, I gotta hide this thing from my wife or whatever." I was like, "I won't do that to you, Sound Engraver. I won't do it." But yeah, some of the EU purchases, can be up there, and you gotta just little things too, random things like the Dark Forces. If you played the video game Dark Forces back in the day, this is the sort of the novelization they did, the 3-part hardcover, and it's really great. And it took me a while to find, part 3 in a good price, or at least the best price I could. But so things like that, and that's the real story of how the rebels got their hands on the plans for the Death Star. None of this Rogue One nonsense. That's the real story there. It's you've got some great characters. Mara Jade shows up, at one point in it. It's really good stuff. Dr. Weiss says, I managed to score the omnibus of the entire Dark Empire trilogy at a thrift store. That's freaking awesome. Yeah, occasionally you get really cool finds like at thrift stores or yard sales. Those are wonderful. I'm jealous of you there. I've got all the separate Dark Empire like paperback graphic novels. Little things can cost a lot, like the Jedi Apprentice series. That was Obi-Wan's story as a growing Jedi, I think, unless I got that wrong. Yeah, that was Obi-Wan growing up under Qui-Gon. But then you got the series of Anakin under Obi-Wan too, and those are just little children's paperbacks, and they can be pricey. So some of the ones that they just didn't print a lot of back in the day. I mean, some of the Galaxy of Fear, like the Star Wars Goosebumps books. Some of these are kind of hard to find too. So yeah, but it's fun. It's fun to collect something. And even when there's stuff that the Disney has re-released as Legends, like, no, there shan't be a Legends banner on my shelf. The only way I'll do that is if the Legends publication includes something in print that wasn't included before. So I think, for example, like one of the mall books or something like that, there was a novella or like an ebook released too. And I think one of them, I can't remember which one, but I went ahead and got the Legends copy because it was the only in print edition that also included this ebook or whatever. But even then, I'll still get the original EU book as well. I try to get hardcovers whenever possible, whenever they actually made them, whenever possible. But yeah, the EU collection is slowly growing. I'm proud of it. It's a fun thing to collect. Oh, Tom Spiegel actually got the Dark Forces audio drama on disc. Then I dug through some trash as part of my job and found another set for free. Yeah, I've seen some of those on sale, like eBay and whatnot. As of right now, though, you can find a lot of that great stuff. There's still, if you're somebody who, wants to get into some EU content, but you can't really spend much money right now, look up on YouTube. A lot of these audio dramas, Tales of the Jedi audio dramas, they're out there. They're either on YouTube or I found them in a Library of Congress site one time. The Dark Empire, the original trilogy audio dramas, which are so great, and the ones you're talking about there too, the Dark Forces. Yeah, that's out there too. Andre Hernandez said, Prof, no more anime recommendations. It's too much. Also, Prof, more EU recommendations. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Well, hey, there's a little bit of difference right there, right? Anime envelops a 1,000 different genres and all kinds of different, EU is all Star Wars, right? I watched within recent history, two of just the best anime movies I've ever seen. I've been going really, really slow with Naruto and My Hero Academia because I don't want it to end, right? I want to stay behind. So I've always got more to watch, even though I know they're still making or whatever My Hero, I think. But, I finally watched Will of Fire, the Naruto movie Will of Fire, because I'm right now in the Pain saga right now in the series. And that movie blew me away. That movie was all the Naruto movies were kind of fun, whatever, they're fun. Some of them were kind of good. But that Will of Fire, man, talk about an aspirational hero's journey. Man, it's freaking amazing. Blew me away. I was telling Sound Groover about it the next day. And then shortly after that, I finally got around to watching My Hero Academia Heroes Rising. I'm like, 2 movies behind on that one at that point. And that blew me away too. It's just the same. Like, this is so cool. Because I thought Two Heroes was amazing. That was great. Deku and All Might before All Might kind of, lost the flame and stuff. It was great. But Heroes Rising was just, that's man. As of right now, unless the new movies they made are even better than that, those two go down in my list of my top 5 animated films, right up there with The Incredibles, Superman versus the Elite. So good stuff. Bonjour to you, JR from Louisiana. Are you in Fan Man's part of Cajun country there? Yeah, Naruto episodes abound. It's true. There's no running out of those. So, all right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Believe it or not, I haven't even had dinner yet. I just got home from Mass and crashed pretty much after shopping a little bit, grocery shopping, and then got ready for the stream here. So here it is, 11:15 or so. And I need some food. So I'm going to go do that now. But thank you guys for hanging out. It looks like I did make the hour mark, which is about what I usually do on the live streams. I appreciate it. I'll probably carve out some of this for its own video. And at least I'll be back by Friday for another Star Wars EU study. We got, I think, 2 more in the Dawn of the Jedi study. And then, like I said, in October, I'll be doing a Galaxy of Fear, something or another. Not regular every week, but in October, there will be some EU content from that. And then in November, we'll return for the EU book studies, probably Dark Empire, but I have not 100% on that. But yeah, and then, of course, we'll do the live stream again next weekend and such. Slav said, eat, dog, don't starve. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I need to go steam some broccoli, get my chicken and rice. Sounds like I'm eating healthy, right? Broccoli, brown rice, chicken. But then I smother it all in buttermilk ranch. Oh, no regrets. No regrets. I've been walking about 3 miles every day, just getting ready for the wedding so I can look for good for the pictures and stuff. And that's the thing about me. As long as I'm doing some kind of exercise like that, regular exercise, I can pretty much eat whatever I want to. I don't know if it's just being a man or being a man of a certain age, not, too old yet or whatever, but it's awesome. I don't take it for granted. Yeah, I agree, Padre. Great meetings from Mass today. It was really good. Sounding Graver and I both talking about that forgiveness, the importance of forgiveness, not holding grudges and being angry and stuff. Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you for hanging out. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. You guys are awesome. It's always fun hanging out with you, and appreciate all the support, whether super chats or just hanging out with me, being another number in the watching list and enjoying the chat. It's always fun. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue Star Wars stories you love. Thanks for watching.